I registered for a social networking account, eagerly anticipating the chance to be paired with a special little friend. Yet, I was immediately addressed as mom. But I am only 5 years old. Nevertheless, it matters not, I can be a good mother. 1. Today, I downloaded a smart app that claims to create a persona uniquely my own. It sounded intriguing, and as my tiny fingers danced across the screen, it prompted me. Is this for individuals or for everyone? What does that mean? I do not comprehend. I shall choose for everyone, and I obediently waited, hoping it would connect me with a remarkable little friend. Yesterday, my peer, Xiaohua, boasted about making a foreign companion.
Ha.
I can be even cooler than her. Yet, gazing at the word mom on the screen left me somewhat bewildered. I am only 5 years old, however, it is of no consequence during playtime. I often take on the role of a mother. I can indeed be a good mother. 2. She should be a young girl who has just reached adulthood. She confided in me that today marks her 18th birthday and expressed her desire to receive a blessing from her mother. Wishing my precious daughter a happy birthday. I converted her voice message to text and sent it. However, birthdays are occasions that necessitate gifts, and I recalled the coming-of-age ceremony I once attended, realizing it was too late to prepare anything. Thus, I inquired, "What gift would you like? I can provide it for you." After a moment of hesitation, she shyly replied, "Could you perhaps send me a pack of sanitary napkins?" I understood that this was a special time for her. Mothers typically have them, and it is important to take good care during such times. Asked for her address and hurried downstairs. Wang Ma, please call the delivery brother for me. After that, I dashed into my mother's room and rummaged through her stockpile of sanitary napkins. They were colorful, so I decided to take 2 of each kind. I then scurried into the kitchen, opened the drawer, and retrieved some ginger syrup, which would help soothe her discomfort. Watching me flit about, Wang Ma smiled and asked, "What are you doing with all these yao yao?" I joyfully informed her, "I'm sending them to my daughter. It's her birthday today." Suddenly, I remembered that we also needed birthday cake and KFC. I adored KFC, but my parents always insisted it was unhealthy, allowing me to indulge only on my birthday. So, I needed to order some for her as well. I promptly asked Wang Ma to help me place an order. Although she didn't quite understand my actions, she complied. I ordered several family buckets and messaged her, "You can share this with your friends. Happy birthday." 3. Once the order was completed, I inquired about her condition with the delivery brother. He informed me that her living situation was quite chaotic, as she resided in an urban village, and that her complexion looked rather pale. I felt a pang of sympathy for her, yet simultaneously a sense of joy welled within me. I had a daughter. Unlike the games we played in childhood, this was a real daughter. Subsequently, I searched online for advice on raising a daughter and discovered that at 18, she should be preparing for university. I also stumbled upon a post that lamented, "A living expense of 1,500 is truly insufficient." Thus, I transferred her 4,000. She was taken aback and questioned, "Why are you sending me money?" I replied, "A mother ought to provide living expenses for her daughter." The chat box indicated she was typing, but it took a long while before her message arrived. She returned 3,000 to me, saying, "I am currently in a difficult situation. May I hold on to this money for now? I promise to pay you back when I can." I found her to be incredibly sensible and asked, "What is your name?" She introduced herself as Gu Yuyu, an orphan who began working after turning 16. However, due to her underage status, she could only find sporadic jobs and had recently lost her employment. She truly had no money. I was puzzled. "If you have no money, where do you live?" She replied, "I've lived under bridges and at construction sites, but now I've rented a small room for just 150 a month. However, I'm struggling to make that payment." I reassured her it's all right. It is a mother's duty to support her daughter. "From now on, I will send you 4,000 each month." I had just researched that many older sisters mentioned the job market was quite challenging and even graduates struggled to support a family. Now that I was a mother, I couldn't be too harsh with my daughter. For, after a while, my mother returned from shopping. She knocked on my door and asked, "Darling, Wang Ma just told me you sent some sanitary napkins to someone. What's going on?" I excitedly explained, "It's for my daughter." My mother was taken aback. "Where did you get a daughter?" I held up my phone and pointed at the screen. This app matched me with a daughter, a very unfortunate little girl. Today is her birthday, but she is going through a special time. So I'm sending these to her. My mother's expression turned peculiar, yet she patiently cautioned me. There are many scammers out there, specifically targeting naive individuals for money. But I was unconvinced. The delivery brother said she is in dire straits and that she is an orphan with no one to care for her. If I don't help her, she might end up like that pitiful mother and child I saw in the app, freezing to death on a cold winter night. My mother asked, "Is she from that restaurant where they carry babies to build houses in the winter?" I nodded, yes, that's the one. My mother covered her face. Utterly exasperated, "Sweetheart, real life is not like an app." I replied earnestly, "I know that. In games, you can respawn, but in real life, once a person dies, they are truly gone." Tears welled in my eyes as I clung to my mother's leg, imploring, "I don't want my daughter to die." My mother, with no other choice, sighed, "But you cannot give her too much money." I nodded in agreement. My daughter is very sensible and easy to care for. Just 4,000 a month. I had an allowance of 100,000 each month, which, though not excessive, would suffice to support her. My mother finally relented, and I smiled through my tears. 5. With the arrival of my daughter, I became increasingly devoted, for raising a child is a significant responsibility. However, I was still in kindergarten, so I could only chat with her each night. Today, the teacher distributed 2 small buns, and I saved one along with a box of milk, asking Wang Ma to have the delivery brother bring it to her. My father teased, "The items cost more than the shipping." I retorted angrily, "It's not about the shipping cost. I'm worried she's not eating properly." My father expressed curiosity. "Do you think of her often?" I nodded while digging into my bowl of egg custard. "Yes, I think of her every day." My mother laughed, saying, "Indeed, only a mother can be bound by her child." I chuckled, but when my mother came to my room that evening to tell me a story, I declined. She looked at me in disbelief. "Didn't you always love it when I read you bedtime stories?" I nudged her at the door. "Yes, but now I have a daughter, and I must tell her bedtime stories. So, you can't read to me anymore." My mother appeared somewhat disheartened. "Have you forgotten about me now that you have a daughter?" I comforted her by patting her leg. "Mom, you are an adult, and my daughter is still a little baby who needs more love. It's not that I love her more than you. She simply requires more care." After sending off my slightly jealous mother, I climbed into bed and took out my phone to tell my daughter a story. Little bunny Tiao Tiao lay on the grass gazing at the stars when suddenly, a shooting star fell into the forest. He hurried over and discovered the injured star. Tiao Tiao used dewy petals to heal the star, and it ascended back to the heavens. Tiao Tiao fell asleep with a smile, dreaming of playing with the star once more. My daughter was delighted, as I awoke to find she had sent me a sticker. Happiness. Hee, she really liked it. 6. My father admonished me to be cautious, advising me not to send my daughter photos, nor to sneak out to meet her. Although I yearned to see her, I understood the dangers of a young child venturing out alone, so I harbored no such thoughts. Yet my daughter was quite capable. She lived independently and had already secured a job. She found work making milk tea and would receive her first paycheck next month. It was my first time hearing about such a long-term job. Her tone was exuberant, yet my heart felt heavy. The thought of her struggling to make a living at such a young age made this mother's heart ache. My daughter earned money and informed me that she no longer needed my monthly living expenses. Nevertheless, I remained resolute in sending her money each month, advising her to save any surplus or purchase things she desired. Once she stabilized her job, I would stop sending it. Yet she consistently returned 3,000 to me, only keeping 1,000 for herself. Sigh. I kissed the screen. My dear child is so easy to care for. Gradually, however, she seemed to become quite busy. When I messaged her, her replies came slowly, and I often fell asleep before I could tell her bedtime stories. Sigh. I sat on the sofa, cradling my rabbit plushie, enveloped in a cloud of gloom. My mother approached, wrapping her arms around me, and softly inquired, "What troubles you, my dear Yao Yao?" With a face full of grievance. I confessed, lately, I have been able to converse less with my daughter. In the past, we would chat incessantly after school, but now, even at bedtime, our exchanges are few. My mother gently stroked my head, tilting it with a look of compassion. "So, you are quite saddened, are you?" I nodded in affirmation. "Yes. I feel quite heartbroken." Then, my mother imparted, "Yao Yao, do you understand? The bond between a mother and daughter is akin to a journey that gradually distances itself." I gazed up at her, honestly shaking my head. "I do not understand." She paused momentarily, clearing her throat before continuing, in simple terms, "As she grows older, your connection will inevitably diminish. She will need to focus on her studies, pursue a career, seek enjoyment, cultivate friendships, find love, and eventually raise her own children. Her life will become increasingly rich, leading to a natural reduction in a parent's role. Additionally, we must learn to let go." I cupped my face in my hands, resting my head upon them, and let out a heavy sigh. "All right, I understand. I must learn to be a less clingy mother. Today, I felt a surge of joy because my daughter announced she would be on holiday, allowing her to rest for the entire day. In the morning, I donned my little backpack and told my father I shall not be attending school today. My father, puzzled, asked why. I beamed widely, sharing the delightful news. Because my daughter is on holiday, we can play all day. My father glanced at his phone and replied, but today is Wednesday. You do not have a holiday. I pouted, but I can take a day off. It's a rare occasion for my daughter to have a day off. To my dismay, he seized my little backpack and tossed me into the car, playfully retorting, no, today you must learn that life has its unavoidable difficulties. In kindergarten, I sat distractedly as the teacher instructed us on painting. My friend Xiaohua, curious, leaned over and asked, Yaya, what is wrong? I glanced at her, feeling lethargic, and replied, I miss my daughter. She tilted her head, pulling out her Barbie doll. Didn't you bring yours? You can borrow mine. Looking at the curly-haired doll before me, I waved my hand dismissively. Oh, I can't explain it to her. As soon as school was over, I eagerly pulled out my phone to ask my daughter, how was your day of fun? She replied, I lay in bed all day and played on my phone. It was pure bliss. I scratched my head, pondering why she wouldn't go out to enjoy her day. On weekends, my parents would take me to amusement parks or ice skating. Whatever we did, we never stayed at home. I simply didn't understand. Perhaps I hesitated too long, for her response came back a tad cautiously. Do you think I'm being too lazy? I, being an honest little girl, inquired, why not go out? It's such a precious day off. Yet, she said, I don't feel it's a waste. Then, somewhat bashfully, she added, going out costs money, and I find work a bit exhausting. I just want to rest at home. Suddenly, it dawned on me. This might be her most economical way to unwind. I praised her. Well, you're a good girl. I considered offering to pay for an outing, but recalling her exhaustion, I realized she might genuinely prefer to stay home. I decided to respect her choice, patting my little chest, reassuring myself. That evening, as I prepared for bed, I noticed a new message from my daughter. She wrote of a drunken man persistently knocking on her door, filling her with fear. I dashed into my parents' bedroom, lifting the covers. Father, hurry, my daughter is in danger. My father, holding his belt, looked at me with an expression of concern. Now? Are you serious? Meanwhile, my mother covered her face, blushing deeply. Confused, I tugged at my father's pant leg, insisting, of course I'm serious. Armed with the address my daughter had once shared with me, I urged my parents to take the bodyguard there. In the dimly lit urban village, with its uneven floors and cars unable to navigate, I felt a chill as the night was pierced by the cries of stray cats, resembling the wails of children. My mother comforted me. Let us return home. The police will handle it. I clutched my father's neck, resolutely shaking my head. No. What if the police don't arrive? Finally reaching the ground floor, we heard the commotion of police officers arguing with the man, intermingled with the faint sobs of a girl. I wanted to rush forward, but my father adamantly refused. Stay put. Let the bodyguards handle it. The trio of bodyguards ascended, and shortly thereafter, they returned, escorting the man into a police vehicle. My father led me to the entrance, where I spotted a frail girl in a white nightgown, hastily throwing on a thin coat that appeared worn and faded at the cuffs. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes red-rimmed as she struggled to explain herself to the officers. I truly don't know him. I cannot fathom why he knocked on my door. The man, dazed, attempted to touch her shoulder, jesting, I was just playing a prank. Look how frightened you are. The girl recoiled behind a female officer, while the man continued to taunt her. Such a timid thing, living alone. Anger surged within me, and I felt the impulse to strike him, but my father held me back firmly by the scruff of my neck. I clenched my fist, shaking it in the air, indignantly saying, Father, don't stop me. I must teach him a lesson. Ultimately, I was subdued by my father's unwavering restraint. Oh, my daughter, it is not that your mother is powerless. It is simply that your grandfather is far too ruthless. As we were leaving, I noticed the female officer earnestly advising my daughter, consider finding a better place to live. The conditions here are too poor. My daughter fidgeted with the hem of her clothes, her head bowed. Thank you, officer, but because it's close to the commercial district, the rent for a better place is $2,000 to $3,000 a month, which I cannot afford. My heart ached, realizing my daughter was enduring a harsh life due to insufficient wages. Upon returning home, I clung to my father's leg, pleading, Father, please help find a small apartment for my daughter. My father's expression turned pained. Isn't it enough that you support your daughter every month? Now you want to find her housing too? I nodded emphatically. Of course. Raising a child necessitates concern in all aspects. I continued. Her current living situation is far too hazardous for a young girl. A better home would not only ensure her safety, but also save her time to rest. However, my father countered, she is still young. This is the time to strive. I inquired, when can she take it easy then? My father stroked his chin in contemplation. Perhaps after 3 or 4 years of work, when she has saved enough, life will become easier. Yet, he added thoughtfully, by then, she will likely be in a relationship and married. After marriage, she'll need to share the burden of the mortgage with her husband, which may entail further hardship. What if she has a baby? I interjected. No. Babies require care, which means more toil. He continued, once the baby is in kindergarten she should. But then he shook his head. No, no. As babies grow, they require more financial resources. At that point, she will need to work even harder. Perhaps we wait until the child graduates? But she will need to save for a wedding or dowry, I suggested. And once the child starts working, she will still need support. Finally, my father waved his hand. We can only wait until the child gets married. Yet, he became conflicted again, but after marriage, she will probably have to help with the grandchildren too. It wouldn't be right to have them resign from their jobs. Listening to this, I felt quite dizzy. But I had grasped the essence of it. There would never be a moment of ease. I jumped up and playfully struck my father's knee. Humph. You're a silly father. My daughter shouldn't have to endure such hardships. I will take care of her. As I gazed at my father, I asked him with a sense of despondency, are you truly going to treat me this way? Is your only intention to raise me and then abandon me? He immediately embraced me, reassuringly saying, of course not. I will care for you for a lifetime. Only then did I smile with joy. I informed my daughter that I had secured an apartment for her, relieving her of the burden of monthly expenses. I had already paid for an entire year, so she needed to move in quickly. Otherwise, the house would remain empty, wasting money. My daughter was deeply touched and said, thank you, Mom. This filled my heart with immense happiness. However, after a fortnight, she sadly relayed that she was being laid off due to a relative of the boss coming to the store. She felt guilty for being unable to keep a job. I comforted her, saying, this is a normal occurrence. Society cannot guarantee employment for everyone. People lose their jobs every day. It just happens to be your turn this time. It's all right. I also congratulated her on finally having some time to rest. Yet, her tone was anxious. Without a job, there's no income, which means it will take longer for me to repay you. I sent her a playful emoji, saying, Mom is not seeking repayment from you. Besides, this is merely a temporary setback. You want to be unemployed forever. When you have the means, you can repay me then. That will make me very happy. She responded with an image of a crying kitten. I have only just found a mother, and I do not want to disappoint her. I was perplexed as to why she thought I would be disappointed in her, considering how hard she had worked. If life were to be lived as my father suggested, what meaning would it hold? She certainly deserves time to play and travel. Thus, I treated her to some milk tea and fried chicken to celebrate her rest. Eventually, my daughter ceased to be sorrowful, yet she began posing peculiar questions. For instance, she asked what would happen if she were an ordinary child. I was also unsure about the distinctions among children. However, I recalled an incident involving a boy in her class who, during the New Year, threw firecrackers into a drain, resulting in a catastrophic explosion that not only destroyed property, but nearly injured him as well. In the end, he had to pay $5 million in damages. Startled, I shook my head and quickly replied that an ordinary child is one who grows up on time, attends school obediently, and avoids trouble. Though lacking extraordinary talents, such a child would also not attract significant troubles. But that doesn't sound like an ordinary child. That sounds like an angelic child, I mused. I must possess the greatest treasure in the world. My daughter then queried, what if I choose not to marry or have children? That would be splendid, I replied. Dad always says he doesn't want me to marry, to remain a little princess forever. So I said, that is wonderful if you marry someone else. I would miss you terribly. Confounded by my daughter's unusual behavior, I turned to the internet for answers. I soon discovered that many young women expressed similar concerns. Some labeled them as greedy, yet I sensed their profound sadness. It seemed that upon growing up, they felt they no longer had a home. Hence their persistent need to validate their parents' love. During dinner that evening, I asked my parents, if you were to pass away, to whom would the inheritance of the house belong? My father was momentarily taken aback, but instinctively answered, of course it would go to you, sweetheart. Why would you ask such a question? I candidly explained my reasoning, and my father comforted me briefly before pulling my mother away. Curiously, I discreetly followed them and overheard my father asking my mother, "Are today's scammers becoming too brazen? Monthly living expenses are not enough. Now they are eyeing dowries and property. Do they wish for me to live too long?" My mother playfully nudged his arm, reproaching him, "Stop talking nonsense. Just say your daughter is recharging in a game." I pouted, feeling discontent. My daughter is certainly not a scammer. She must be asking out of insecurity. Remembering a saying I had encountered, "Where money is, love follows." I returned to my room alone, retrieved several property deeds from my drawer, and took photos to send her. "Sweetheart, you need not worry about this matter. You are a wealthy second generation." I wondered if this response would convey my love. Being a real mother for the first time, I still felt somewhat clumsy. A month later, my daughter joyfully informed me that she had earned some money and wanted to send me a gift, asking me for my address. The following day, I received a lovely handbag, which filled me with immense joy, and I rushed to show it to my mother, exclaiming, "Look, this is a gift from my daughter." She thought of me first with her earnings. My mother praised its beauty, while my father, glancing at it, raised an eyebrow and remarked, "It's all right. This bag is an older model, worth only 20 to 30,000. I understood that for my father, that amount was insignificant, but for my daughter, earning money was challenging. This was undoubtedly her entire income. She loved me enough to buy this for me. Thus, I glared at my father indignantly. "You are such a spoil-sport. This is her first hard-earned money. Regardless of the amount, it is the thought that counts." My parents burst into laughter at my earnest demeanor. How annoying! I stomped my foot and ran to our neighbor's house, pulling out Xiaohua to showcase my handbag. "Look, Xiaohua, this is a gift from my daughter." Xiaohua was astonished and quickly fetched her Barbie doll, tugging at its hair, asking Molly, "Why don't you give your mother a gift? Mommy often styles your hair and dresses you in pretty dresses. You should also gift her something." I stifled a laugh, thinking, this is not just a doll. This is a living daughter. My daughter has since become quite close to me, no longer returning money, and she shares her life with me, detailing what she ate or where she went. It is evident that her life is improving. I was overjoyed. This is the joy of raising a child. However, one day, she suddenly ceased all contact, and my messages went unanswered. I became anxious and enlisted my father's help to investigate. Despite having seen her, he said, "What trouble could she possibly be in? She probably just ghosted you." I burst into tears, hitting my father's leg. "You want to even look into it? What if she's in trouble?" Seeing my tears, my father hurriedly admitted his fault. "I misspoke. I will help you find her, all right?" My mother quickly pulled me close, saying, "Sweetheart, come here. Don't cry. Let me show you something entertaining." She introduced me to a controversial blogger known as Yao Yao, a mama's girl, who shared dialogues with her mother. In one instance, the blogger asked, "Will the house be left to me or my brother?" Her mother replied that it would be left to her, as her brother would live with his wife, and she worried about her not having a home in the future. The comments were filled with envy for the blogger's good mother, with many layers of replies. My mother, with a serious tone, remarked, "There are some truly wicked individuals in this world who deceive others. Look at this blogger. She gained fame from these dialogues and secured numerous advertisements. Yet, who would have thought it was all fabricated?" Confused, I asked, "How do you know she made it all up?" My mother showed me a comment where someone exposed that the girl was lying, claiming to be her middle school classmate. She was an orphan with no mother and had performed poorly in school, failing to even graduate high school. My mother then revealed her chat history, which turned out to be fabricated. The mother she spoke of was entirely fictitious. In an instant, the blogger was labeled a fraud, and the comments section erupted with condemnation. Some went so far as to say it was the last fantasy of a worthless girl, who was, in reality, just a neglected child. My mother gently patted my head and remarked, "Your daughter might very well be a deceiver like that. If we ultimately cannot locate her, please try not to be too heartbroken, all right? However, it seems that Yao Yao shares the same name as our precious one." I brushed my mother's hand away, rejecting her offered comfort, for that was indeed me. Fearing that my parents might not believe me, I rushed upstairs to retrieve my phone, displaying the chat records to them. Many of those exchanges mirrored the one shared by the blogger. My mother gasped in astonishment. "It truly is you." I nodded vigorously, pleading with them to assist me in posting a message, particularly in response to the comment that claimed she was an unwanted child. She was far from being an unclaimed wildling. She was a cherished little darling with a loving mother. Days passed, and at last my daughter responded with an apology post, confessing her deceit, revealing that she was indeed an orphan and that the woman in the post was not her real mother. Yet, netizens began to flood her comments with messages. "No, your mother is looking for you." I hurried over to her comment section to leave a note. "Dear daughter, it's me, your mother. I am real." Clearly, I still struggled to grasp the distinction they made between a real mother and a fake mother. I existed in reality. How could I be deemed false? Thus, the crisis was resolved rather muddledly, and I was to meet my daughter at last. My parents, apprehensive, even summoned several bodyguards for protection, insisting that one must remain wary of others. I shook my head. I found them utterly exasperating. We agreed to meet at a Western restaurant, where my daughter appeared in a charming little white dress, her hair styled in a side braid, looking exceptionally well-behaved. Upon spotting us, she nervously clutched the hem of her dress. When she glanced at my mother, her lips moved several times, yet she hesitated to utter a name. I sensed she might have misunderstood, so I stepped forward and gently patted her belly. "Darling daughter, do you not recognize me?" Her eyes blinked in disbelief. My mother smiled awkwardly and pointed at me, confirming, "It is her." I took my daughter's hand, seated us both, and introduced her. "This is my father and mother," I said, then turned to my parents. "This is my daughter." Remembering their relationship, I added, "You may call them grandfather and grandmother." To my surprise, before my daughter could speak, my mother waved her hands in refusal, her face a mask of shock. She pointed at my father, and then at me, exclaiming, "No, no. I am only 29. You should call me sister, him uncle, and her mother. We shall each refer to one another accordingly." My father, astonished, glanced at my mother and hastily added, "I am only 30. Calling me brother would suffice." My daughter couldn't help but chuckle, but I felt a surge of anger. Were my parents refusing to acknowledge my daughter? How infuriating. Guyuyu side story. 1. Today marks my 18th birthday, yet it is not a day of joy for me. My poor academic performance resulted in my failure to gain admission into high school, which signifies the end of my orphan subsidy. My part-time work has ceased as well, for many businesses are reluctant to hire minors. I find myself devoid of funds, and with my monthly cycle arriving, I am doubled over in pain. Unable to leave the restroom, I have but one sanitary pad left, which I must ration carefully. Otherwise, I shall be unable to venture out in search of employment tomorrow. Yet, today also brings a glimmer of happiness, as I have received a gift from my mother, a grand birthday cake and a bucket of KFC. Gazing at the screen of my phone, which I had inadvertently downloaded, I am momentarily lost in thought. During my time in the orphanage, the director would occasionally procure a cake for us to share, but typically, we would receive only the smallest morsels. Even so, it was something I would look forward to for ages. KFC, too, was a culinary dream for every child, something I would often pass by while working. A mere hamburger cost several days' worth of my wages, and I could never bring myself to indulge. Yet now, I am able to relish it all on my own. She suggested I share with friends, but in truth I have none, and I hesitate to share. I savored it over several days, yet, as I was unaware of its shelf life, by the second or third day, it had begun to spoil. Despite its sour odor, I couldn't bear to throw it away, leading to several days of stomach troubles, yet I still felt a sense of happiness. 2. I seem to have encountered a fairy godmother who not only provides me with monthly living expenses, but also helps me find a place to stay. Unlike Cinderella, however, her pumpkin carriage does not vanish at midnight. I am aware that there is no such thing as a free lunch. I later learned that many of those who offer money online are often lending institutions with exorbitant interest rates. Many fall into a spiral of debt, with some even resorting to jumping from heights. Yet, I find it difficult to detach myself from that motherly warmth. Thus, I only take 1,000 yuan each month, working at a milk tea shop during the day and a supermarket job in the evenings, ensuring that I can repay her. Can I continue to deceive her? I have never experienced such comfort in life, no longer needing to rise 2 hours early to catch a bus, enjoying an independent bathroom, and being far removed from the neighbors who once filled me with dread. I have even learned to indulge. Once, a week's worth of meals consisted of merely a packet of noodles and a few buns, but now I dare to enjoy instant noodles with sausage. How decadent. I must work even harder. Yet perhaps the heavens disapprove of my newfound happiness, for I was unexpectedly dismissed from my job. I pleaded with my boss for mercy, but he remained unmoved. When I returned home to tell my mother of this misfortune, I couldn't help but cry. However, she appeared delighted, even ordering milk tea and fried chicken as a treat for me. She said, "When unfortunate things occur, one deserves a special reward. Otherwise, you will always feel bitter. Thus, on what should have been a dismal day, I found myself feeling unexpectedly sweet. 3. My dependence on my mother has grown increasingly pronounced, and I suspect this is not a favorable development. Like an addict, I indulge wildly, while simultaneously testing the waters. I bombard her with a barrage of nonsensical, illogical questions I had gathered online. Countless times, I sought to prove she was a fraud, that she did not love me, urging myself to break free from this delusion. Would my room still exist after I left home? Would she take away my dowry upon marriage? How much would my wedding gift be? If I were to buy a house, would she assist with the down payment? Who would inherit the family home? Yet, with each affirmative response, I genuinely felt her love enveloping me. I may not know the standard answers, but I have come to understand that without a mother, I no longer envy any child who has one, for I possess the world's best mother. Netizens have echoed, "Your mother loves you dearly." Is that so? How wonderful! I shared these sentiments online, for they are the only aspects of my wretched life worthy of boasting. Thus, when the truth unraveled, I was left in anguish. The falsehood was always a facade. Yet my heart whispered to me, though my mother may not be real, the love I receive is genuine. Therefore, when I saw her replies tearing apart my comments, I tossed and turned in bed, my heart bubbling like a winter hot spring. I am her child, acknowledged by her own lips. We arranged to meet at a Western restaurant, and I purposely donned a beautiful outfit, hoping to leave a good impression. Yet when I saw the three of them arrive, I found myself unable to utter the word mother. She appeared so youthful, and the little sister beside her was utterly adorable. Was this her child? She was so beautifully raised. However, I would never have guessed that the delightful girl in the strawberry bear dress was my mother. Oh my goodness, she must still be in kindergarten. I thought to myself, let us forget it, our age difference is too vast. But she pouted and approached me, gently patting my head, saying, no matter how old you are, you will always be Mother's treasure. I repeatedly tested her resolve, and she continuously professed her love for me. Happiness is just within reach, timid Guyuyu. You must muster the courage to be brave, at least once. I say this to myself. I shared our photograph online, and my followers congratulated me, exclaiming, you've met your mother. Best wishes. However, my mother appears remarkably youthful. Is the age gap rather minimal? I replied, indeed. So she is not the one who is young. It is the younger one. The netizen responded, yes, I have a mother. She is 5 years old this year. As for the bedtime story, at midnight, precisely 11 o'clock, my mother knocked on my door. In her arms, she cradled a rabbit plushie, her eyes gleaming with excitement as she looked up at me. Darling daughter, I have come to tell you a bedtime story. I greeted her with a smile, opening the door to let her in, watching as she clambered onto the bed with both hands and feet. I gently lifted her little bottom until she was comfortably seated. She squinted her eyes in delight, saying, thank you, dear daughter. Then, with her tiny hand, she patted the bed, urging, come, let us sleep. Obediently, I crawled under the covers, enveloped by the sweet fragrance of her milk-scented presence and the soft, adorable sound of her voice. Once upon a time, there was a little kitten who found an injured bunny on the road. I murmured to myself, indeed, that's me. The kitten took the bunny home, gave it a bath and dried it off. I chuckled softly. Yes, that's exactly how mother treats me. Then, it offered the bunny a can of beer. I pondered, beer? The bunny fainted, and the little kitten was heartbroken. I comforted. It's all right, it's not the kitten's fault. Thus, the kitten held a funeral for the bunny, with music and festivities to send it off. Suddenly, I was wide awake. Is this really a funeral? Perhaps it could be saved. Don't give up. The sorrowful kitten plucked the bunny's fur, cut into pieces, took out the grill, and sprinkled barbecue seasoning. I screamed, it's not supposed to be like this. I whipped my head around to look at her, only to see the little girl grinning mischievously, her hands poised like claws as she lunged towards me, laughing heartily. Meow, meow, meow. The bunny is delicious. I embraced her soft little body, conceding defeat with a smile. All right, cunning little kitten. The end. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe. Until we meet again for the next story.